Before I get started, I'd like to acknowledge a couple of celebrities in our midst. We have the honor of the last surviving radar man from the D-Day invasion in Normandy. Would you please stand up? It happens to be my dad, Bob Curl. He led the first wave on Omaha Beach.
Oh, man.
Pretty amazing fella.
And survived.
And lived to tell about it, yeah, without a scratch. Secondly, Max, would you stand up? Max Maxfield. Max is a technical writer, an author of half a dozen books, and he was also kind enough to loan us the NEMA encryption machine, which is an extremely rare device. You'll be seeing some more about it in a few minutes. And make sure and go down to the Historical Radio Society booth and get a look at the displays we've got down there, because it's some pretty amazing stuff. And I'm going to be talking mainly about how the Enigma machines work. There's a lot of a backstory about what they had to do with the war. There are some wonderful movies about that aspect of it. I'm going to refer you to those movies in a few minutes. But these machines were a series of electromechanical, they're called rotor cipher machines. And they were not initially developed for wartime purposes. They were used for commercial, diplomatic, and military communication. And the Enigma, and by the way, the Enigma is a company name. It's not necessarily a type of machine. The Enigma company, or they produce these under the Enigma name. But it was developed by a fellow by the name of Arthur Sherivas at the end of World War I. These first machines were printing machines, and none of these are known to exist anymore. This was strictly a mechanical machine, and it printed the ciphertext on paper. So we have very little information about those machines and how they operated. They tried again to come up with an improved version of the printing machine. Still failed miserably. The thing was, it was prone to failure. It was hard to manufacture the thing. At the same time, they started manufacturing a completely different branch of cryptography machines that didn't print. Instead, the output was on light bulbs. So this is the last of the printing machines, and this one machine is the only one left in existence. So after this one, they changed over to what's known as the glow lamp machine. And this is the one that you'll see in the movies. Instead of the printing, they had three code wheels up here. There are light bulbs behind each of these letters on the display, and a keyboard. And the whole thing ran on a 4-volt battery. That machine was much less expensive, a lot easier to transport, and more rugged. So it started getting traction. And here's how these machines work. You saw the three wheels on the cipher machine. Each of these wheels has 26 spring-loaded pins on one side. And inside the wheel is a matrix of wires that go to 26 fixed contacts on the other side. So they're able to scramble the connections as they come through here. The original machine had a keyboard that was connected to this side and fed signals in. And by the relative rotation of the different wheels, the output came out over here to a series of light bulbs. So that was a pretty good encryption scheme. But they came up with a way to make it better. This machine includes a couple of extra additions to that other one. Here are the three wheels that we saw before, but they've added a fourth wheel, the UKW wheel, which is known as the reflector. The things that the reflector did was it would allow the machine to both encrypt and decrypt using the same code wheel settings. Before that, you had to have different code wheel settings depending on whether you were encrypting or decrypting a message. Additionally, the device labeled Stecker is a plug board, a set of wires that were on the front of the machine, so they could scramble those wires however they wanted to. Of course, as long as everybody was on the same page about what today's code wheel settings are and how those wires are connected, they could decode their messages. And just to follow a simple connection through here, now we're only showing 2 circuits through here. Remember, there were 26 circuits in each of these wheels. Like when you press one of the keys, this goes to one side of the battery. You can follow this through. It goes through the code wheel, through the entry wheel, through each of these wheels here. It went through the patch board, through the code wheels, the reflector. It turns around and comes back again and ends up illuminating a light. Now you'd think that's pretty good encrypt, but where they really got sneaky is those wheels don't stay stationary. Every time you press a key, the wheels change. The first Enigma machines only changed the reflector over on the far end. The more recent Enigma machines had the wheels in pairs, so there was a code wheel and a stepping wheel side by side. So they were able to come up with a very complex motion. The reflector would change after every keystroke, the other wheels would change after every maybe third or fourth or fifth character. In 1926, the British Foreign Office demonstrated the Enigma to the British government. The government bought one. Can you imagine how things would have been different? They considered it too unwieldy. The same year, it was adopted by the German Navy. So those guys started catching on to there's something good there. The next year they came out with an improved version, and here you see the patch panel, or the patch board on the front. That's called the Zahlwerk Enigma, and that was adopted by the German Army. Now, after the series of Enigma machines, there were a couple more that came after these, but the changes were really very slight. But this was the one that got most of the traction during the war. But just after the war, they came up with a greatly enhanced machine that, and they're extremely rare, and you'll find one in pristine condition, thanks to Max, at our booth downstairs. These machines occasionally turn up at auctions. It's rare for them to turn up. In this auction, you'll see a machine that sold for $30,000. The one downstairs is in better shape than that. So, also during the video, you'll hear a mention of the war machine. These came in war machines and practice machine versions. The war machine is the rarest of the rare, and that's what we've got downstairs.
The Swiss NEMA Cipher machine is an extraordinary piece of both military and mechanical engineering history. Known as a new machine, the NEMA was developed by Zellweger AG in Uster, Switzerland during World War II to replace the German-engineered Enigma K after the Swiss realized that both the Allies and the Germans were able to break the Swiss traffic. It's estimated that only 640 NEMAs were ever created. This particular model was kept in storage to be used only in the event of war. So the exact number of war models remains classified. It is unknown how many actually exist, and locating a model like this is extremely rare. Though too late to be utilized during World War II, the NEMA became widely used by the Swiss Army and the diplomatic service during the Cold War era. The NEMA uses a 10-wheel mechanism, 5 stepping or drive wheels, 4 coding wheels, rotors, and 1 reflector wheel that is movable during encryption. The use of the reflector allowed the designers to effectively replace the plug board found on the Enigma. The reflector and coding wheels are the only wheels that are electrically wired. The addition of the movable reflector and stepping wheels allowed the NEMA codes to be more irregular and therefore harder to break. You'll notice when I push a key, I push H, then M lights up. I push H again, B lights up. H again, L lights up. H again, D lights up. There are, as I mentioned, 30 billion different combinations. That was simply one key. The case features the following label: issue only in case of war mobilization, in 3 languages. The original plaques and markings, including the serial number TD465, are included on the cover of the machine. One of the few rare models intended as a war machine, this NEMA is an incredibly well-preserved example of this fascinating machine. Thank goodness this machine never had to be used.
Discover a world of luxury exclusively at MS.
So I think you'll enjoy seeing that at the booth down there. So before the war, Alan Turing started working at Bletchley Park. He developed a machine called the bomb that was used to decipher, come up with what the wheel settings were for these machines. He worked on it for a couple of years and had almost no success with it. I'm going to show you from the movie The Imitation Game. If you haven't seen this movie, spoiler alert, you might want to put your fingers in your ears. I'm going to show you the turning point of the movie where they figured out what they had to do to break the code.
What if Christopher doesn't have to search through all of the settings? What if he only has to search through ones that produce words we already know will be in the message? Repeated words, predictable words. Exactly.
Look, like this one. 0600 hours, weather today is clear, rain in the evening, Heil Hitler.
That's it. Exactly. They send a weather report every day at 6 a.m. So that's 3 words we know will be in every 6 a.m. message. Weather, obviously, and Heil bloody Hitler. Heil bloody Hitler.
Here's the 6 o'clock message from this morning.
The right-hand letter, we'll send them to... I know. Weather and Hitler. Peter John, run voltages through those letters through the background.
Okay, so will you salute?
Yes, Joan. What was the last 6 a.m. message?
L.
L.
H.
H.
W.
W.
A. Q.
Done.
I'm not going to tell you what happened next in the movie. It will keep you on the edge of your seat.
What was the name of the movie again?
The Imitation Game. And it's really well done. I have a friend who works at the museum over at Bletchley Park, and they actually used this was a recreation of the bomb that's at the museum that they used in the movie. And he said they got a lot of things right in there. But you know, once they were able to find out what the wheel settings were, you'd think, well, from there it's a simple matter to decrypt any message that they encountered. Well, actually, there was still quite a bit more to it. This is an actual picture of a message that was recovered from the sunken U-boat U-534. It was sent by Grand Admiral Donitz on 1st May 1945 at 6:55 a.m., announcing his appointment as Hitler's successor. Hitler was already dead at this point. He committed suicide a day earlier on 30 April at about 15:30 hours. So once you had the settings, you couldn't just dial them into the machine. You have to know what kind of machine it is, because there were variations of the machines. You had to know which reflector wheel to use. There were several different reflector wheels that could be put into the machine. There's a new wheel called the Greek wheel. It was a fourth stationary wheel that could not be interchanged with the other wheels, and it made 26 times more code possibilities. Then you had to know the wheel order, because each of the wheels was different. The ring setting, this is that first wheel that feeds the signals into all the other wheels. Which way is it rotated? This is the actual code wheel setting here. That was the piece that they figured out using the bomb. The plug panel. This is what gets plugged into what on the plug panel. The message key. At the beginning of each message, they sent a message key, and then they repeated it again at the very end of the message. And if you think about it, when these code wheels turn after every character, if you miss a single character, the rest of the message falls apart. There's no way that you can retain the rest of the message. So you had to verify those first two sets of 4 characters had to match the last set of two groups of 4 characters. So you knew that the message was valid once that happened. So once you went through all that, this is what the plain text looked like. You'll notice there are no spaces. There's no space bar on the machine. There's no carriage return on the machine. So everything's all run together. And each of the folks who generated codes using the machines would come up with their own ways to indicate line breaks. Double characters, rarely used characters, like the 2 X's. That would indicate a line break. So we start with the plain text. From there we go to the formatted text. And of course it's still in German, and they still got the line termination characters over here. Then after it's cleaned up, that's what it looks like in normal German. And then the last step, strictly for our benefit, there's the content of the message. I'll give you a minute to read through that, because that was a turning point in the war. Now, considering how complicated, how rare, how expensive these machines were, it's amazing how much technology has changed these days. You've got a smartphone. You can run this app on your smartphone. Mine happens to be an Android. You can actually encode and decode real Enigma messages. Something they don't tell you in the instructions, by the way, if you click on the Enigma nameplate, you get settings, so you can shuffle the wheels around and you can set which kind of machine it is. So what I did just as a test, I set the code wheels to BHAM, and then I typed the word Hamfest. Now there was actually not a tape on the machine, but just to make it simpler for you to see what it's doing, they give you a tape on the display. So there's the encoded word Hamfest, and you notice that it's sent in blocks of 5 characters. Sometimes they sent blocks of 5, sometimes it was blocks of 4, and you'll notice the code wheel settings changed. It started BHAM, ended up in BHAT. So you might want to try, download that app, and you can actually find some of the encrypted messages online, and you can decrypt them on your own. Encourage you to look into this a lot further. Like I said, I've just touched on the basics of how the machines operated. Their impact on the war was really profound. And by the way, when they broke the code, I've heard it said from several sources, they estimate that shortened the war by about 2 years. So that was just huge. But if you want more information, the Alabama Historical Radio Society booth downstairs here at the Hamfest, and the Swiss NEMA machine that's there on display. Cryptomuseum.com. Huge amount of information there. The Crypto Museum is in the Netherlands. The 2 guys that operate the museum are both amateur radio operators. I sent them an email and asked if it would be all right if I used some information in preparing this, and they said great. I said we come to Hamfest in our area all the time. They said you can use anything you want on the website. So they were extremely helpful. The clip that I showed you was from the movie The Imitation Game. There's also an excellent movie, U-571. So I'd like to acknowledge Paul Ruvers of the Crypto Museum, the Crypto Museum site itself, Max Maxfield. Well, somebody's ringing my doorbell at home. I don't know, it'll stop in a minute.
Answer the door.
MS Rao Antiques and Black Bear Pictures for that clip from The Imitation Game. So folks, that's pretty much it. I appreciate your attention. Did anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
I've got an operational question that
Okay.
may not really apply here, but you saw the guy typing onto the keyboard.
Yeah.
And then the letters would light up.
Yeah.
Did it require a second operator to write down the lit?
If somebody's
Right.
typing at that speed, yes. Now additionally, in the lid of the machine is a second lamp display that could be, when you go down there and look at it, on the right-hand side of the machine, there's a 30-pin connector. So you can take that lamp panel out, plug it into the side of the machine, so somebody else can be standing off to the side and they can take it down as you type. Additionally, there was a teleprinter made that would plug into the machines, but I have not been able to get any information that anybody actually used one. It had the connectors there for the teleprinter. Matter of fact, I'm not sure they ever actually built the teleprinter. Any other questions? Max?
Not a question, there's two things.
Okay.
One of the problems with codes is that if you decode the enemy's messages and you react on that information every time, then they know you've decoded their messages. And there's a picture of Winston Churchill on somewhere, I think on the coast, looking out to sea, and he looks forlorn. And it was the day that night Coventry was going to be bombed and almost wiped off the face of the earth.
Yes.
And they cracked the code and they knew that Coventry was going to be bombed. And they didn't evacuate.
Yes.
Because if they'd evacuated, German spies would have reported back. They would have known we'd cracked the Enigma code.
That's very true, and there's a lot more to that story, and that's one reason when I showed that clip, that's why I stopped where I did instead of 30 seconds later, because there's some things in there. It's hard to believe that the people did what they had to do to protect the knowledge that we were able to break the codes.
And then the other thing was the film U-571,
571.
which the story behind the film is an American team capturing U-boats, and the sole purpose is to get the Enigma machine. And it was almost exactly right at the set. It wasn't U-571, it was U-110, and it wasn't the Americans, it was the British HMS Bulldog. And this was several months before the Americans even entered the war. Apart from that, spot on, Hollywood at its best.
Okay. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Is there a simple comparison that can be made to the Enigma versus the machines that the U.S. Navy was using for to encrypt?
On the Crypto Museum website, there is a comparison chart. I don't know that it has, it's mainly the really, really old machines. I don't know if it has reference to any of the newer Navy machines, but you will find a lot of machines there that you can compare.
Because what would be an interesting comparison is really the World War II U.S. Navy, I think it was an ECR or something like that,
Yeah.
versus what would be the big.
Well, as good as that, the digital encryption, we've got the triple DES encryption. Oh, we're just so far ahead of what they had then, and it was great then. Any others? All right, well, that's it. I appreciate your attention very much.